Today, we will be analyzing a physics bug within the game Jak and Daxter: The Precursor Legacy. The bug we'll be looking at allows the player, or Jak, to gain a large amount of unintended vertical height, which can be used to bypass essential in-game barriers. Let's see if we can figure out what's causing this to happen. First, we'll need to reproduce the bug so that we can take a closer look at it in action. If we slow the footage down, we can see that a particle effect takes place right before Jak is thrown up into the air. From playing the game casually, I know that this particular particle effect happens when Jak is making contact with a grassy ground surface. This leads me to believe that a ground surface is at play here. Next, we will use some debugging tools to take a closer look at anything related to the ground. Under the collision toolkit, I can enable a visible version of the collision in the level. Changing the mode to material will color coordinate the visible collision with the material type. For example, stone surfaces will be colored gray, ice surfaces will be colored light blue, grass surfaces will be green. You get the idea. I can also change the filter mode so that it only displays the ground-related collision, since this bug seems to be tied to the grassy ground surface somehow. By doing this, we can clearly see that there are vertically oriented stone textures that seem to be programmed with ground collision attributes. This looks to be a slight programming oversight, since vertically facing stone textures are typically programmed with wall collision attributes. Wall collision will prevent Jak from passing through a wall or have him slide off the side of a wall, while ground collision will allow Jak to stand, move, and attack normally as if he's on the ground. Because these stone textures are programmed to have ground collision attributes, this leads me to believe that Jak, in theory, could stand on it like any other piece of ground collision. Now, I want to know if Jak is able to walk on vertically facing ground collision, or better yet, completely inverted ceiling ground collision. But for this, we're going to have to find somewhere else for testing. Here on the Cannon Tower in Sentinel Beach, there is a circular window frame that appears to have some inverted facing obstacle collision, which acts like ground or wall collision depending on the angle. Using debug tools, we can see that the material assigned to the window frame is gray, which means stone? This window frame has the wrong material type and the wrong collision type assigned to it. Perfect for testing. If we jump up to the inverted ground collision within the window frame, Jak has a brief moment where he is reset to his grounded state. We can see the particle effect poof again, as if he's just landed on a stone ground surface from a jump. Jak then immediately falls back down to the ground. Now, what if we try jumping again before he begins falling? Interesting. Now, what if we just keep jumping? Okay, this is very interesting. As Jak's hitbox makes contact with the inverted ground collision, he is changed from his jumping state to a standing state, as if he's landed on the ground. Then we jump again into the inverted ground collision, get the standing state again, then jump, stand, jump, stand, jump, stand, jump, stand, blah, 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 until we decide to stop jumping. Okay. So what we've learned is that Jak can't walk on walls or ceilings that have ground collision accidentally assigned to them, but we can change Jak to his standing state if he makes contact with such surfaces. So now we've discovered that during the bug, the mistakenly programmed vertical ground collision is what's causing Jak to change to his standing state as he flies into the air. But what exactly is causing the momentum upwards? In my testing, I found that this only happens if Jak makes contact with the vertical ground collision while he's punching upwards during his uppercut animation. My first thought is that by uppercutting into the vertical ground collision, Jak is reset to his standing state, but the speed and momentum of the uppercut animation is maintained. The vertical ground collision is essentially interrupting the uppercut animation. With this theory in mind, I went to see if I could find anything else in the game that could interrupt the uppercut animation and maintain momentum. I was able to discover that the uppercut could also be interrupted by the portal's usage prompt and these specific cutscenes at the eco vents. My suggestions to the developers for fixing this bug would be to A. Change the specific surfaces from ground collision to wall collision so Jak doesn't receive a standing state while interacting with them, and B. Revise the uppercut animation so it is an uninterruptible sequence.